This is King Edward I of England. Like all good kings, he wanted to take things belonging to other people in order to raise his own status and cement his legacy. This is King Philip IV of France. In the late 1280s, he has all of the lands in France that Edward wants and feels entitled to. I want those valuable territories in the north of France. No, those are mine. Lots of good peasants out there. Those lands are my birthright and they belong to me. Do you have a receipt? A what? Without anything proving they belong to you, I really can't help you. You are free to file a complaint, though. You can also fill out this survey about your service here today, which will automatically enter you for a chance to win one peasant. How about I just invade with an army? Let's come back to this. Ever since Edward ascended the throne in 1272, he wanted to undo the treaty his father Henry III signed with France, in which the King of England no longer had claims to certain lands in France. And with this treaty, the King of England also had to pay homage to the King of France for the meager territories they actually did get to keep on mainland Europe. This essentially made the King of England and his properties on the mainland a vassal state in France. Even at the time of the signing in 1259, this was seen as a pretty bad move for England. Edward I had a reputation of having a short, unpredictable temper with an intense desire to reclaim lands in France. His early years, prior to becoming king, would have been heavily influenced by what were seen as failures by his father, King Henry III. As such, Edward would have developed a dislike and desire for revenge toward those who subdued his father, which was France. And this never did leave him. It was such a constant motivation for him that he even made a vow in 1287 to go on a European-wide crusade to retake the lands, though he never did, despite having occasional skirmishes with France over the years. So Edward's personality is one of aggression and resentment, with the always present pressure on a king to expand and conquer. Basically, it was only a matter of time before he invaded and conquered someone. But would it be France? Let's revisit the conversation with King Philip IV. How about I just invade with an army? I even made a vow to prove how dedicated I am to this. Oh wow, that changes everything. Really? No. This is my army, and these are my resources. What do yours look like? Realizing an invasion of France to retake the lost territories is basically an impossibility, Edward I turned his sights elsewhere. But because he is such an emotionally stable person, upon being confronted with his traumatic realization that his lifelong goal of retaking his birthright lands would never happen, he sought the help of advisors and visited the best therapists of the day to confront these internal demons and find peace for himself and his kingdom. Yeah, no, not really. He compensated for this internal turmoil with the psychological defense mechanism known as displacement. Displacement is when a person redirects a negative emotion from its original source onto a less threatening source. And what do you know? Anger displacement is probably the most common form. As such, Edward decides to take out his anger on Scotland, who is a much less dangerous and capable opponent than France. In the preceding years, up to the beginning of the 1290s, Scotland and England basically got along fine, with Scotland even paying homage to England. But, like the dog about to be kicked for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, Scotland found themselves to be the new recipient of Edward's expansionist ideas without any real provocation for this. When a succession issue arose in Scotland in the early 1290s, Edward became involved in Scottish politics. With no reason to fear Edward at this point, the Scots actually asked for his help. But it turns out this was a bad idea given Edward's current psychological state. Edward was given control of the realm for about 2 years until in 1292 when the Scots finally agreed on a new ruler. From this point on, though, Edward would continually assert authority over Scotland, ignoring the ruler they chose, basically treating them as his subjects. And, as a king does with subjects, he demanded things like money and men for war. But the Scots, never viewing themselves as subjects, eventually formed an alliance with France, which of course Edward did not approve of since in his mind they were now just being rebels. That the Scots would turn to France for help would have only further motivated Edward to take out his anger towards the French onto the Scots. In the coming years, the Scots would have numerous uprisings, revolts, and attacks on England. Each time, Edward would respond more aggressively than the last, earning him the title of Hammer of the Scots. Edward did everything he could to remove their sense of identity and independence, including taking the Stone of Destiny, which had been used to coronate monarchs in Scotland. To this day, the Stone of Destiny is still used in coronations for the King of England, though it now lives in Scotland when not in use for a coronation. What had been a lifelong motivation and goal to retake lands in France by King Edward I turned into a decades-long war with a completely unrelated group of people due to Edward displacing his anger and aggression he felt towards France onto the Scots, a much less dangerous opponent. Edward is generally looked at as having accomplished a lot as king, but it wasn't what he truly wanted, which was to retake the lands in France. Psychology and mental health has played a major part in history, and I will keep exploring these topics. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for future videos I could do, and please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.